name is Jared Hart. I am the current organist at Grace United Methodist Church, but because I am making this video, it means that I am leaving that position. And so, welcome to whoever is watching this video, whoever is taking up the mantle, or whoever wants to just learn more about the organ. This video is for you, and it will specifically pertain to the Grace United Methodist Church organ. Now, some of what I say will apply to many other types of organs, but this is primed as a training video for whoever is picking up the mantle next, just to learn some of the ins and outs of this organ, or in the off chance you're getting a pianist, hello pianist, and I will try and guide you through what it's like to play the organ. So, if you have any questions, please feel free, leave a comment, reach out in some way, shape, or form, and I will do my best to get back to you. But yes, that is what this video is going to be about. So, thank you for being here, and I hope it's useful. The first thing you're going to want to figure out is how to power up the organ, and perhaps you've already figured that out before you were directed to this assistance, because it's not terribly difficult, but I figure I'll walk you through the steps anyway. And we have the main light above us, which is very simple. Sorry, apologies. We're going to turn the knob on this, if my fingers will do it. There we go. And ta-da, it is on, but only the light. The rest of the organ is still completely off. And that is where this little button down here comes in. This power button on the left side, you press and hold for 2, maybe 3 seconds. The underneath lights will turn on first before the rest of it is fully going, and you might be able to hear from the little speaker to the side a little boom, sort of a sound. That means it's all good to go. Once you have that figured out, then voila, now we can start talking about the next elements. On the Grace Church organ, there are 3 different what we call manuals. And manual is just a fancy word for keyboard. Now, you might correctly notice if you are sitting at the organ as you are listening or watching this that there are some other things, and we will get to those in due time. But these are our 3 main manuals, and this is kind of what we're going to focus most of our time on, is just how to operate these 3. If you are familiar with different types of organ designs already, this is, I believe, a German design. There's also a French design. I can cover that. That'll be fine. I probably won't confuse you too much. And the fact that this is a German design won't impact you greatly if you're confused on what in the world is the difference. Now, let's start at the very top. The hardest one to reach. This is our swell. And so top manual is the swell. So whenever I talk about the swell, that's what we're talking about, is that very top manual. Then in the middle, we have what is called the great. And great because it is the greatest of the 3. It is the most powerful at the end of the day. Of the 3, it can bear a lot of weight. And the swell, I should also say, is the quietest. Now on the bottom is what we call the choir. And the choir is the middle of the group. It can do a variety of things, but it can't quite do everything that the great can, but it can certainly do more than the swell. So you have your 3 options there. Now off to the side, we have this little baby keyboard, this little manual. It's a chime set. And so if you're doing a piece with chimes, or if they want a bell feature in some way, shape, or form during service, this is what you would use. Because I'm holding the camera, this is going to be difficult, but essentially that knob down there on the right side is your volume control. Right now it's set completely to off, so I cannot play it. But let me just turn it on. Ta-da, there's chimes. Now, I should specify that almost all of this organ is electronic. However, the chimes are the one physical part to this organ. There is a set of chimes up in the rafter thing over there, and so it mechanically receives a signal and it says play this one, and so that's what you hear. And that's why that has very few controls in a sense. It's really only the volume option on or off, and I believe there are 5 different volume settings as well as the off option. So you can get some meat out of it, but the main bulk of the organ, because it's electronic and has speakers on both sides and everything, at the end of the day will overpower the chimes. So if you're using them, just think about balance. Now that you know what the types of manuals that we have are, and yes, we will get to the pedals in just a little bit, but we're going to hold off on that for now. We're going to learn just how to use our hands to start with, and the feet kind of follow in the same pattern. So we're going to focus on this. Now that you know what the different types of manuals are, we have to learn what stops are. And stops are what make the sound on an organ. You select different stops, and it puts that combination of sounds on, and so when you play it, that's what you're playing. All of these little tab-looking things up here are stops, and we're going to cover almost all of them. Now, what's nice is they have these little labels above them. So this row right here, these are our swell stops. And I'll get into what the colors mean. So these sounds go to this keyboard. So you can hear that kind of faintly. That is the swell sounds. Similarly, over here we have our choir. The POS is the German word for it, and I can't think of what it's called. So for all intents and purposes, choir, yep, is this one. So that's all of our controls for it right there. And then we have our grate on the bottom right-hand side at the top for the stops, which again is our middle keyboard. So if you want to select your keyboard, then you also need to look at what stops are available on that keyboard. So sometimes when we get into talking about registration, if it calls for a particular type of sound and that sound is only available on one keyboard, then you kind of know where that needs to go. So first things first, then, what are the types of sounds that our stops have available to us? Okay, so what are the types of sounds that we have on an organ? I wish I could show you, but trying to turn on and off stops with one hand while you're holding a camera just isn't going to work. So, for all intents and purposes, I'm going to do all of my showing on the swell unless I otherwise specify. Sound fair? Okay, so we're looking at the swells list of stops. You'll see it starts with a bourdon deux, French, 16 foot. That's what the 16 with the apostrophe means. It's like how you'd measure height for anything else, 16 foot. Starts with that on the left side, all the way over there, top left corner. Just to show you what that sounds like. Ooh, it's very quiet. Let me adjust this. Sounds very deep, very resonant. That's because it's 16 foot. The foot part on all of the stops relates to what octave it's in. So 8 foot is at pitch. A piano string for, it's not middle C, but it's like low C or something, is 8 feet long, and that's where we get our measurement. Similarly, the pipe for that, the low C down here at the bottom of the keyboard, that's 8 feet, and that's where we get that measurement. So 8 foot is at pitch, so 16 feet is an octave below. If that's confusing, that's okay. It more gets into, once again, that combination of sounds. If you want things doubled at octaves, you just add extra octave of pipe, and you don't have to do it with your hands. Anyway, so we have 16 foot, 8 foot, 4 foot, 2 foot, and I think this organ has a 1 foot. Yeah, it does have a 1 foot pipe. And then the bass, the pedals have some 32s. So you have a wide variety of where you can put things, if you so choose. Now, talked about the bourdon tout. Back to that. 16 foot, very soft sound. It's a type of flute, essentially. Now, there are flutes, strings, reeds, and foundations. So all of our flutes have sort of a fluty sounding name. Some of them you might see 2 foot on the swell. Block flute. Block flute. Show you what that sounds like. Once again, very high pitched because it's 2 foot. So it's going to be 2 octaves above whatever you're playing at that time. Similarly, knocked horn, it could sound like something else, but it's kind of a flute sound. Flute celeste, gedacht. I don't remember if gamba technically is a flute, but something like that is your flute sounds. Only on the swell for this organ do we have strings. Okay, our viola pomposa and viola celeste are our only string options on this organ. So there are only strings when you're trying to plan that out, and they're only available in 8 foot. The other ones that I want to talk about are the reeds. Reeds, real quick, are always on this organ marked in red. So let me flip the camera around and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so on our swell, we have a lot of green and then we have red. Similarly on the pedal, we have red. Over here, we have red. All of our reds are the reeds, okay? So reeds refer to the way that the sound is created on an actual pipe organ and not like a festival trumpet. You might think trumpet, oh, that's brass. No, on an organ, it's technically a reed. It sounds like a trumpet, but it's produced through a reed style pipe, which is why it gets classified as that. So all of your reeds instantly in red, you know where they're at. So just to give you a little taste of what those reeds sound like, here's a couple, actually all of the swell reeds put together. Your bright sound, and particularly a lot of like double reeds, your oboes, your bassoons type of a sound. Your brass, obviously trumpet. One in there, vox humana, human voice. It's supposed to imitate that. Oh, it's very quiet. So if you need a solo voice, a reed in combination with, let's put it with, our viola. Yeah. Now the vox humana in particular is very weak, so the viola overpowers it. But you get the idea. A reed voice works well for a solo. The other one that I want to talk about, the categories we've covered so far: flutes, reeds for certain, strings, which are only available on the swell. And there's actually one I left off, but next is foundations, and then we'll talk about mutations. So foundations and mutations are last. Wow, I can't talk. It's a day. The swell does not have a lot of foundations. Notably, the principal, 4 foot, is the one true foundation on here. It's bright, it's round. Oh, hey, look, I have this piece of music that has an organ on the cover. Your foundations are going to be these big pipes. They're almost always the showy ones. These trumpety looking ones are like a reed style. Spanish trumpets are like a thing on organs sometimes. This is more what you'd expect a flute pipe to look like. And so when you think foundation, think about those pipes that are really front and center on an organ, case, right, as it's an actual pipe organ displayed, your foundations are going to be right at the front. They're going to be the loudest. They're going to be the strongest. And they're going to have a very neutral tone. They're not going to sound like a flute. They're not going to sound like a reed. They're just bomb sort of a sound. So going over to our our great selection of stops, we have the principal at 8 foot. We have an octave at 4 foot, which is just saying principal again, except we're going to do it only in a higher octave. And then we have a super octave. So put those all together. It's that nice, bright, classic organ sound. That's what your foundations are. So super simple. And then last but not least then is our mutations. Everything, all the other 4 categories, our flutes, our reeds, our strings, and our foundations, are available in complete octaves. The mutations are where we get off of those octaves, right? 4 foot, 8 foot, 2 foot, and really allow us to spice up the color a little bit. And so, going back to our swell, trying to use that as our demo as much as possible, we have the nasard, we have the tierce, and we have the plein U. I think I'm saying that right. The nasard is 2 2/3 of a foot, which is not a whole number. So it's not at octave. It's like 2 octaves and a fifth or something like that, higher than your regular 8 foot pipe. So this is going to be me playing middle C with the nasard on. Sounds like it's a high note, but you don't have a sense against what actual pitch is. So I'm going to put the strings back on. I'm only going to put 1 string on because that was too much. I can't even get up there. But you hear how it's offset from everything else. So if you're trying to do a big section and want that really bright organ sound, you're going to get all those overtones put together. That's where you put the mutations on, is you get that blend of sound up in the super high register. That's what really brings it out, rather than being perfect octaves all the way across. Particularly that triad, C, E, G. In that permutation land, it just mixes it all together and makes it super bright. And that's what really makes people, excited about the organ in a lot of senses, is hearing that mixture. You're at service when you hear that going. But not every piece calls for it, and it gets really bright and loud, so it doesn't work in every setting. But that's what your mutations are kind of for, or just being a little bit of color on top if you're only using one at a time. And the mutations are available on all of the keyboards, manuals. Each one has at least one. Now, there are some other stops on those rows that I haven't talked about in any way, shape, or form. So let's take a look at the swell one, shall we? Okay, here we are. We're at the swell. We've covered all of these. We know that they're reeds, and that they're strings, and that they're foundations, and that they're mutations. All of the things that we talked about, and flutes. And then we get over here, and there's like 5 here at the end. Tremulant, swell to swell, swell unison off, swell to swell, and choir to swell. These are interesting. Now, the tremulant is what we would otherwise call vibrato. So, rather than being straight tone, it will give it a little bit of a wobble. The other 4 are couplers, and I'll talk about couplers in just a second. But the tremulant is available on all 3 of the main manuals, but it is not available on the pedal. Okay, so let me show you what that sounds like, and then we will move on to what couplers are. Okay, so this is the regular principle on the swell. Very straight tone, very flat. This is it with tremulant. Has a nice, pretty wobble to it. If you're trying to solo out a line, tremulant can be really beautiful. Oh, once again, I need to balance these things properly. That little wobble on top gives it a really cool color. And so tremulants can work well for that. I don't advise using it for the chordal accompaniment. It works okay, but it's not my favorite. But that's a little bit about tremulant. And once again, available on all three of the manuals. Next, we'll talk about the couplers. There are a lot of couplers, and all of the couplers on those tabs are in black. Now, the ones that say unison off, probably fairly self-explanatory. If somehow you would end up sending two commands of the same sound at the same pitch level, it will tell it not, it'll only say play it once, don't play it twice. Let's use our foundations over on the great, unison off. We'll do it on the choir. Choir, we have principal and octave 2 foot. Choir, unison off as well. And then we're going to turn on another coupler, just for the sake of showing you what this is, and that's the choir to choir 4 foot. So this says we have our sound, the principal, on, check, great, got it. We have the octave option, which is play it as well up an octave. And then our 4 foot coupler says we're going to take everything and play it up an octave from where it's originally sounding as well as where it's originally sounding. Couple as in put together, right? So take these, add these. Now, this is the same as this, right? So then our unison off says only play this and not this, right? Take one out of the equation. That was a lot, but what does it sound like? Oh, sorry, that's way too high. You can hear, and this is no unison off. So it actually beefs up the higher octaves when you turn the unison off. But yes, that is just a little bit about how the off part works. The rest of the couplers, though, what do they do? Couplers either can give you the same sound at more octaves on a single keyboard, right? So staying on our choir, we have choir to choir 16 foot. That's take everything I have on, move it down an octave as well. Or choir to choir 4 foot, everything I have on, move it up an octave as well. And then we also have our swell to choir 16 foot, 8 foot, and 4 foot. And that says, I want the things from my swell manual on my choir manual. And so let me bring those sounds down either at pitch or offset. Okay, give you kind of an example of that. Let's say we have our festival trumpet on over on the swell. Ta-da! And let's say we have on the great, we just have the GEMS horn. GEMS, not gems. Okay, so that little sort of accompaniment figure against our main melody. And then on the choir, we're going to do swell to 4 foot. Okay, so we're going to take the trumpet up an octave on the choir, and then we're going to add our flute to it, and why not the principal as well at 4 foot? Because I like those sounds better than the Rohrgedacht. I don't know. So we're going to play our melody up here on the swell first. And then stay at the same notes, but go down to the choir. Ta-da! That's how you mix and match. Now, you can get a whole lot more complicated. You can have way more things transferring over. Like if I turned on all of the swell and all of the choir at the same time. I don't know, but you can mix and match more than just one sound. It's everything that is turned on the one manual is what the coupler draws off of. So if you really don't want a trumpet going down there, then you're going to have to turn off the trumpet on the swell. So it can sometimes be a game of management. And yeah, I think that's all on couplers. I realize I've gotten this far without telling you how to turn on and off a stop. It's a very complicated process. Let me show you. That is sarcasm. Okay, here are our stops. You just hit the tab to turn it on, hit the tab again to turn it off. Very complex. Now, let's say we have a bunch of stops on. I'm just randomly turning things on. You can just turn them on and play like that and be all good to go. You don't have to worry about anything. I do it all the time for quick little things. And you can just do it, turn it all off by hand at the end. But you can save yourself some time on some quick changes by this little button 0 here in the bottom right underneath our choir manual. Now, if I can get it. Okay, so my arm's about to press 0. It's called general cancel. It's a lifesaver. So don't need to press every single thing off if you're just going to shut off the organ or backing away for the organ from a time, whatever, something like that. General cancel is your friend. Now, we need to talk about these general ones in the middle because there's some quirky things here. Okay, so I'm going to make sure you get a photo of this so that while I'm showing you other things, I can put the photo back to here and you can reference it. Okay, we're going to start with that top general. And I think the reason it's split into 2 general groups is because of just the spacing of how all the other stops have to lay out, that there's not a lot of middle ground for it to all go in one line. So let's just start with that first general, right? We have main off, antiphonal on, pipes off, ancillary on. I don't even know what ancillary is. Either way, from my experience, none of those do anything. I don't know if something is not hooked up inside the organ, if we're just not utilizing it to its full capacity, but to my knowledge, those 4 do nothing. Capiche? Great. Now on to the bottom ones. Flute tremulant full. This, think of it like the next gear up on our tremulant. Right, over on the swell, I'm going to turn on the tremulant, and I'm going to turn on the flute celeste. Okay? Got a nice waver to it. Now this is turning on flute tremulant full. It's not night and day difference, but if you're trying to get as much as you can, that gives you more power on the tremulant, more vibrato. Main chorus off, don't know what that one does. Sorry. Festival trumpet FF. What does FF mean in music? Fortissimo. Festival trumpet found on our swell. So this is regular. This is fortissimo. Once again, not a night and day difference, but it gives it more oomph. So when you're really trying to bring home Easter Sunday, there you go. There's your friend. The others have, in parentheses, choir, great, and swell. CH being choir, GT being great, and SW being swell. That's just the shorthand for them. And we have harp, carillon, harpsichord, and glockenspiel. Now, harp sounds like a harp. As far as I can tell, there's no way to stop that bleed, so you just have to let it go. Got it? Great. Next up is the carillon. The carillon, I think, is the most confusing out of these. For those of you who don't know what a carillon is, go to Iowa State, go straight north of the Memorial Union, you'll see the carillon, but it's a bell tower is what it is. And so I think part of the reason the chimes are separate is because the carillon takes up a full manual on the main body of the organ if you want to use it. And there's enough times where you use it that, sure, the carillon does go up way higher compared to the chime board, but anyway, so this is the carillon. Once again, I don't think there's a way you can stop the fade there. One thing I should also point out, for whatever reason, the carillon transposes on this organ. Okay, on the bottom right side, there's a little dial. The first setting on the dial all the way to the left is at pitch. The second setting on the dial is a minor third above pitch, and the third setting is a major third above pitch. So let me show you. Okay, here's our little dial. You can see it's all the way to the left, which means it's at pitch. Then we're going to put it to the second setting. Boom, there's your minor third. And then the last setting is a major third. And it sounds like it's playing it in tandem with the other one, so I'm not really sure what's going on. But that's that. Ta-da, carillon. And then last but not least, is the harpsichord, once again on the grate. Super plucky, not my favorite sound, but it's there in case you're doing something that would call for it. And then the glockenspiel on the swell, to my understanding, does not function. I press it, and it does not light up, and I never get any sound of it. So, my understanding, that one's broken. Okay. There you go. That is all of the stops that I know this organ has. So, at the very least, now you can make some noise on the organ, muddle around, have a good time. I think next up we're going to talk about registration and how to read that and how to make that. So, okay, so we're going to look at 3 different pieces and the registrations for them. So I'm going to do my best to flash up what the page says. You can always find the registration generally at the top of the page, kind of like where you would see a lyricist name printed. So you got title by composer. Generally the registration's over here. You'll see one example where it's more this way. That is sometimes also common. Anyway, this one, we're going to start with Prelude for Organ by Virgil Thompson. And it says, swell, grate, and choir all are going to have foundations 8 foot, 4 foot, and 2 foot with bright mixtures. So we're going to go find, our swell doesn't really have anything, but we're going to turn on our principal. We don't really have a 2 foot, but we'll turn on all the mixtures. I'm going to go for all the mixtures because I want to. Why not? We're going to go over to the choir, just go straight across. We got our principal, we got our octave, and then we're going to turn on our mixtures. Now, the ones that actually say mixture, yeah, you probably should do that. Mixture can also be mutation. They're kind of interchangeable words. And then last but not least, we're going to go to our grate. We got our principal, our octave, our super octave, and then we're going to do our mutations. Okay, we got that. Next up, beneath that, it starts to talk about couplers. It doesn't explicitly say coupler, but you can get by swell to choir. Okay, we're taking our swell and we're putting it on the choir. So we have to go over to our choir and we have to find swell to choir. And I'm just going to select the 8 foot option. I think 8 foot is completely fine. Then we need swell and choir to grate. Now, we don't have a setting on this organ that is both of them at the same time, so you have to find your swell to grate 8 foot and your choir to grate 8 foot. There you go. And then we need pedal 16 foot, 8 foot, and 4 foot. Doesn't specify what, but you can kind of infer we're going to do the foundations again. So that's our principal in this case, our octave, and then we don't really have a 4 foot one, but I'm going to turn on choral bass because I think it's a pretty sound and it will fit in nicely. So And then last but not least, we need swell and choir and grate to pedal. So we're going to find swell, choir, and grate. The swell, for whatever reason on this organ, can couple to the pedal at 4 foot. It's the only one that can couple at anything besides 8 foot. I'm not really sure why, but hey, it's there. So this is what it sounds like. Another thing to note is that it tells you right at the top of the page, right at the start, not too fast, dash emphatically, right? That's our tempo marking. And then right beneath that, it says GT. And the GT tells you you're playing this line on the grate. Similarly, when the left hand comes in, it has another GT telling you grate. If a composer wants you to switch manuals, it'll generally tell you in the GT, CH, or SW format. I didn't practice this, but you get the idea of what the sound should be like, right? This is all foundations. Sounds kind of classic organ sort of a sound. So that's that. Next up, we're going to look at a pachelbel piece. Okay, so we've already looked at Prelude for Organ by Virgil Thompson. Now we're going to look at making a registration for Preludium by... Gosh, I just said his name. Pachelbel, Johann Pachelbel. Now, I will say before I get into this, if this is a piece you're more interested in, or if you're more interested in hearing how to develop a sound for this, I did perform it on my junior recital, and that video is up on my YouTube channel, so you can go find it and listen to me perform it. It is on a different organ, but you'll still get a sense of what this style is all supposed to sound like. Okay, now, why did I choose this one to showcase for you? It's in German. I'm sorry. We have to deal with that sometimes. Now, if you're a beginner, the church does have some books from 3 organists prior to me. Mrs. Doolittle's collection. Some of it is here in the church music library. And so that has a lot of good options that are in English, and I would recommend checking that out to begin with. But as you get more into things, or perhaps if you already have the music at home in German, you'll have to deal with German, okay? So I want to talk you through what some of these names come across to be. Now, this at the top left says 1 manual, Roman numeral 1 manual. That can be interpreted in a couple of different ways, but it's largely going to be your grate. Similarly, number 2 manual, probably going to be your choir. It could be your swell if you're really feeling it, but for today's intents and purposes, I'm going to say manual 1, grate, manual 2, choir. That's another thing you have to deal with as an organist a little bit, is making adjustments between how many keyboards you have versus kind of how many it's written for, because each organ is different. So, let's see, what do we have? Manual 1, principal, 8 foot. Boom, we got that. Easy, easy. See, German's not that hard. Grob gedacht. We don't have a gedacht. The Gamshorn is kind of similar, so I'm going to turn on the Gamshorn. But if you really wanted to, you could go gedacht on the swell and then couple it down, if you really wanted to go that route. Okay, next up, Nochthorn, 4 foot. Once again, we don't have a Nochthorn at 4 foot. Oh, and then it calls for a Gemshorn at 4 foot. So I'm kind of glad that I put on the Gemshorn already. It won't be perfect, but it'll be something. I'm also going to turn on the flute at 4 foot to kind of simulate that Nochthorn. Now, we do have a Nochthorn 4 foot on the swell. So again, maybe a possibility where you want to put things on the swell and couple it to the grate. Great use of that. Next is an octave 4 foot. Wonderful, we have that right on our grate. And mixture 4 Fach. Fach, F-A-C-H. I need to specify that. F-A-C-H. Vocal Fach is like type, voice type. So mixture 4 type. Okay, that is the German. We don't have a mixture 4, but we do have a mixture 5. So I'm going to go with that. And that puts our main idea as kind of haunting, kind of sounds like your traditional organ. Now, on to Manual 2. Calls for a quintadena, which is a flute type. It's a very dark, round flute. So I'm going to turn on the Earl-Zoller. Not the Earl-Zoller Celeste, just the regular Earl-Zoller. And then a Spitzflute and a Blockflute, both at 4 foot. So we're just going to turn on our regular flute. Gemschornlein at 2 foot, which again is going to be another flute. So we're going to turn on our piccolo at 2 foot. KL, I don't remember what that one stands for. Liebe Gedachtflute. Once again, another 2 foot flute. Zimmel doppelt, which we don't have on this organ, but a Zimmel is kind of that spinny thing that makes sound. And then a Krummhorn, which we do have a Krummhorn. So I'm going to play the same chunk, but this is what it sounds like on our second manual. You get the idea. It's got a bit more in-your-face type of a sound than a big, broad sound. And then for our pedal, Unterstats, 16 foot. That's our sub bass, essentially. Dulciana, 8 foot, which is a nice reed, which we don't really have a great reed, so I'm going to turn on the flute instead. And then a Posana, 16 foot, which Posana is an early predecessor to the bassoon, so it's a reed instrument, big, strong sound. I'm going to turn on our concert trumpet instead, which on the pedal, you will see it also has the SW above it. That's because it's going to be technically the exact same sound bass as the one that's on the swell. So you can't have it on the swell and couple it to the pedal and expect more oomph, because it's not quite the same as the unison that we talked about with the couplers, but similar idea. So that's our bass. So the beginning of this piece then sounds like anyway, you get the point. Now, is the contra trumpet probably a little overkill? Yeah. In that case, I would probably recommend going with a principal. Maybe even all of the 16 foots together, because that contra trumpet is just so overpowering. You get the idea. So that's Preludium. And how you'd go about doing that registration. Lastly, we're going to cover a very contemporary style of notating registration and how to go about that registration. And this comes out of the Organist's Library, published by Lorenz Publishing Company. If you're getting into organ playing and are looking for a book to really add something to your collection that you can use every Sunday, this is a good series to check out. They have multiple volumes of it, so if you get 1 or 2, you're going to be set for a while. And it breaks things up and has a guide in the front, whether something's for Easter or Christmas or Lent, or where in the liturgical year are you looking, and so that really helps. So this is going to be Now the Green Blade Riseth, as arranged by Marianne Kim. And it tells us very little up at the top, which is both a blessing and a curse in some capacities. And it says swell, solo stop, 8 foot. Pick your 8 foot, and if you want to do two in combination to warm up the sound, right? A reed and a flute is a good way to do that, or a flute and a string, reed and a string, something. Two together is okay and can still be a solo stop. And then our great is going to be flutes, 8-foot and 4-foot, which we can easily do on this. I'm going to choose the Gemshorn and the flute, so that type of sound. And I prefer actually starting there, figure out what the accompanent's going to be, and then figure out how your solo fits in on top of that. So we got our flutes, and then pedal foundations, 16-foot, 8-foot, and 4-foot. I'm not actually going to go all the way with a 4-foot this time. This is just going to be our principal and our octave. I accidentally turned on some bass. Okay. Now we have to figure out what that solo voice is. I'm thinking we have a very dark sort of feel to this piece already. A good option to us is probably an oboe with the gedacht. It's going to be a very nice sound. It's going to blend quite nicely with the flutes that we have underneath of it, and have enough power to overcome the foundation in the pedal. So. So that's the whole first page right there, and I did make some mistakes in there. But you hear how the solo goes in and out. We changed the right hand from the swell to the great, and nothing is overpowering any other voice, but they're all working in tandem. And that's the goal of your registration, unless something particularly does need to stand out. And that's up to your artistic interpretation. But that's how all of the parts of registration and stop selection come together. The next element that I want to talk about is one that's a little bit hard to get on camera, and so bear with me as we figure it out, but it's the pedal board. In a nutshell, it operates the same way as all of the other manuals do. Like, it reads like a keyboard, it's just that you play it with your feet. And we do have stop selection over here, operates just the same way. The few things that we've talked about with the coupler, and how you basically only have 8-foot options, is about as interesting as it gets, to be quite honest. It does take time to build up practice with foot dexterity, and so if you're looking to just sit down and play hymns, I would recommend trying to play those hymns just with your hands. You know, if you're trying to learn a bunch on a weekly basis, day in, day out sort of a situation, because it takes time to build that comfortability. And often a lot of hymns have a lot of bum, 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 bum sort of action. And it's not something where you can put the foot down for 2 measures at a time. Okay, now we're going to move it again, and it's just going to be a step. Okay, now we swap feet, sort of a situation. You're using them with full autonomy in most hymn playing. So if this is something you need to sit out for a little bit and come back to later, A-okay. I just want to cover some details with it because you'll still need to think about it in some way, shape, or form, even if you're not doing all that. Okay, so here is the pedal board. Now this is the C in the middle of the bass clef staff, which means this is middle C. Let me turn on some stops. Okay, we're going to turn on our 8-foot on the octave, or 8-foot octave on the pedal, and our 8-foot principal on the grate. So here's the grate. Did you see that? I swapped from foot to hand, and it sounds the exact same. So, once again, it's drawing from the same sound, sort of an idea. And that means that's middle C, which means our highest note that we have available to us is the G above that, which is actually quite a big range for a pedal board. Sometimes they only go up to an F, sometimes they only go up to the C. I have seen some where they only go up to this G. So each organ is a little bit different, but this one we have quite a nice high range. On the other hand, if this is the C in the middle of the bass clef staff, this is the G on the bottom line, which means this is the C below it. You will notice that that is the same C that all of our manuals have. And for organs, this is always the lowest available note. You cannot go lower than C. So, that is the basics of the pedal board in a very simple manner. Then the other question is shoes or socks or, what have you for playing. Now, I prefer these shoes. These are called Organ Masters. You can buy them online. They are sort of the preferred shoe among all organists. Because of this heel, you can roll really nicely. Well, I can't hardly roll. Or if you need to substitute, say we're taking that, boom, or you're going over there, it allows you to roll that foot really nicely to reach it, okay? If you really get advanced, you can make a big jump like that very smoothly because of that heel. For guys too, this works wonders. The other thing is they're a very soft bottom, okay? Very soft, not quite felt, but kind of that idea. So no, you don't want to wear these on the regular. These are really just an organ playing shoe, but they allow you to feel those gaps between the pedals so much easier than if you were in a hard soled shoe. So it's about feeling and about rolling that ankle. Now, can you play in socks? Yes, I play in socks a lot, especially when I'm trying to do quick changes in church before I got to go play the piano again or something like that. But again, I lose that heel. I got to go so much farther to get there. Why should you not play in regular shoes beyond you can't hardly feel anything? The big reason is we don't want dirt to wear down this material. Dirt, rocks, whatever your shoes track in, they can grind down and make rough edges or just wear out the board entirely. So my personal preference, don't use regular street shoes or even any other dress shoe for playing organ. If you don't want to buy the Organ Masters, just go sock-footed. If you have the ability to get Organ Masters, that's my overall preference. But you do you. Okay, we're not quite done with the foot section here. Now, there's all these red things, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. Okay, you got some on both sides, and we'll return to this. But the other part I want to talk about is these guys. Let me turn this back. So in their most off position, they look like this. They also have the little plastic things like we have at our stops. This one is great choir, this is swell, and this is crescendo. Now, probably by the name crescendo, you can guess what they're going to do. This makes the whole thing louder. Now, this has a really handy gauge. Ta-da! On the right side, you can see that go up and down. It's not perfect, but it's automatically adding stops internally. Oh, I still have a couple on from the pedal demonstration. But it's adding stops internally, and so let me hit general cancel. This is without nothing on but the crescendo pedal up all of the way. So yes, it just adds volume. This is if you're needing to add overall sound. That doesn't need to be nuanced. because you can hear those additions pretty quickly. Now, the biggest way we can get dynamics on an organ is through the use of stops. I want to reiterate that. Yes, stops are good at making dynamics. This helps when you have a set selection of stops and need fine-tuned controls. So this one, we're going to start with the swell. Swell, like I said, is the quietest. Let me turn on a stop. What are we going to go with? We're going to go with trumpet and oboe. Okay, so there's my foot on the pedal. There's middle C. It's got a big, wide array of controls. Similarly, I'm going to turn on a couple on the grate. Here's our middle C again. This is for the grate and the choir. And you can hear how much dynamic control those give us. Those two primarily, this if you really just need to bump everything up. Now that you have a good knowledge of the control of the feet and all of the stops, we should talk about hymns a little bit, because we've not covered hymn registration at all. We've had registered solos and things like that, but hymn registration is different because the Methodist Bible, at least, does not give you any suggestions in the same way that an organ solo does for registration, which means you have free reign. At the end of the day, it should be balanced, right? Not overpowering bass, which I'm guilty of at times. Thank you, Rhonda, for correcting that. Not overpowering melody, something that people can sing along with. Not too soft. Not too soft is way more important than not being too loud, because I have, like we did Battle Hymn of the Republic a few years ago, and I went for it on the final chorus, because I was like, come on, let's do it. I love Battle Hymn. And so this combination of things is where your knowledge of stops, like if you just want to, have your factory setting, here's what I'm doing for hymns, and figure that out, great. If you want to personalize each individual hymn, great. But the other thing then is with those middle pedals for dynamics, putting 100 people out in your audience will change how loud it sounds. Right now, I have a speaker right there pointing at me, and that still is there when 100 people are out there, but they soak up a lot of sound. And so are they able to hear me? That is the big question. So having those crescendo pedals, not the crescendo unless you want to, but having the other pedals in your back pocket, so it's like, okay, Sunday morning, this is quieter than I thought. We're going to give it a little bit more volume. It's where that all kind of goes together. So we're going to look at number 70, Glory Be to the Father, in the hymnal. And if you're sitting at this organ, it will be to the right side. That's where we store the organ hymnal. It's in a little binder thing. So we're going to look at number 70, Glory Be to the Father. If you're the organist, you will play this all of the time, every Sunday. So you should start getting it in your back pocket. Once again, if you're not comfortable using the feet and just want to use the hands, totally recommend it to get into things. And so that's how I'm going to register this today, is if we're not doing any feet. Now, simplest thing you can do, great octave, principal octave, and super octave. Just our foundations. That will sound like... straightforward. If you needed more volume to that, you just add a little bit with the pedal. Okay, nothing too crazy. Now, if it's perhaps a little bit more of a somber morning and you don't want that, you could go on the choir, do those first 3 8-foots, call it a day. Also, straightforward, kind of a somber sound. On something like this, I would never recommend a solo voice in the same way that we had on Now Green Blade Riseth. If you're doing something like Silent Night, great. Do a solo voice there. You know, that put it up on the swell, make a nice pretty solo voice. I don't know if I remember how Silent Night goes off the top of my head. That works great in that setting. And that's up to you in interpretation. Just something like Glory Be to the Father. My recommendation, don't solo it out. If I tried to solo it out, you get so much more of that solo voice. And sure, people expect it, but also this is everybody stand and sing. So it feels like it needs more unity. You can then, going off of that, split your hands between two different keyboards. Just make sure they're fairly well balanced. So this will be Glory Be to the Father using the great and the choir. Never mind, that one wasn't a great example. But you get what I'm trying to say, right? Okay. You can invent it how you want, use couplers as you want with hymns. There's no wrong answer, and if there is, an old grandma in the audience will tell you. Fair enough? Okay. The next element we're going to cover is pistons. Pistons save stops, essentially. They are your shorthand ability to just be like, yeah, we're going to go to this setting. And so, similar for hymn playing, if you have your factory setting, right, you can use a piston to do it. Now, what is a piston? Let me show you. On this organ, we have all these little buttons between and beneath the manuals. Now, we already talked about this one. This one's general cancel, shuts everything off. Okay, I'll be honest, I don't know what some of these mean. Like the tutti over here, I'm going to press the tutti. Hold on, first off, nothing on. I'm going to press tutti, and it turns this on. The red on the crescendo pedal. It's the only way to get it. It's just everything maxed. By pressing tutti again, it turns it off. If you turn tutti on, I don't think general cancel turns it off. Just FYI. These others, they kind of help balance things just a little bit, but I would ignore them for the most part. They're just not going to be super helpful unless you're really getting into the nitty-gritty of organ playing. Now, this chunk right here, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, kind of about where general is listed, these are very helpful combinations and can be some of your regular go-tos, especially for hymn playing. They each coordinate, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 coordinate with the swell, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 coordinate with the great, and these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 coordinate with the choir. And so if I press 4, you saw some things turn on. I prefer to go quietest to loudest in my settings of these, and it's kind of reflective in which stops are turned on. And similarly, if we're going to go over here to the great, that one's not quite softest to loudest, but it's pretty close. And then our choir selection looks like that. So you can edit them, and we'll get into that, but those are really handy if you just get up to the organ and you're like, oh man, I forgot I need to come up with a registration for this. Oh, well, it should be kind of loud. Let's go with 3 on the great. Boom. Done. Easy. Lifesaver. Takes a lot of planning out of things, and you kind of have your standard settings, if you will, for how to go about doing that. Then, let me general cancel everything. Here we go. We have this collection. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And these pair with these down here. Set M1 and 2. Now the M stands for memory. Memory 1, memory 2. I'm actually curious about something. Right now we have memory 1 selected. This won't shut off for the life of anything. Okay? Until you go to memory 2. Now just out of curiosity. Oh! Hey, would you look at that? I just pressed 5 over here on the grate. Nothing lit up. However, the Carillon did. So you not only have these 5 options, but you also have all of memory 2 available in these as well. Okay, so memory 1, memory 2, you just have to swap between the two manually. So we're going to go back to memory 1. Now, this is just saying memory 1 is all of these settings, and then memory 2 is all of these settings, and they work independently enough of each other. You just have to remember to swap between the two lists before you select whatever it is you want. So I would put your lesser used but potentially regular, right? Like if you have something specific that you want to do for Silent Night every year at the organ, I'd put it on memory 2 in a place that you're going to remember it. Okay? Because you won't need it every single week, but you will need it on the regular. But we're going to talk about memory 1 for all of these guys. And memory 2 will operate the same. But once again, these could be set from loudest or softest to loudest if you wanted to, but my recommendation is use these to do all of the registrations for your solo work, or potentially even a whole service if that's what you want to do. Okay, I don't remember what piece I registered this for, but it controls all of the manuals at the same time. These 10 buttons do. So if I can change this, boom, 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 that's very loud, ta-da, all over the place. And so this allows you to do really dynamic changes in the middle of a song, right? It'd be possible if you got to a fermata, okay, I'm going to change this one. But we're changing a whole bunch of stuff on the regular, and so that's where this memory is really useful to make those really big dynamic changes super quick, just the press of a button. And if 10 is not good enough, here's another 10 for you, okay, by swapping over to memory 2. So that is the best use of these guys for solo repertoire, or like prelude week to week, that sort of thing. And so we're going to get into how to set those memories and pistons, and that's kind of why I wanted to make this video, is because so far that knowledge is only on this piece of paper, and in case this piece of paper ever gets lost, we will have record of it. So, but before we get there, I wanted to point out one more thing. I said we were going to come talk about these guys. These are more pistons, and you see these have the word gen, or for general, next to them, and these are listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They correspond to the ones up here. So if you're playing something and you don't have time to reach over with your thumb or pinky and hit it, you could press it with your foot. And ta-da, we press general 10. These over here are also more specialized. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, similar to these guys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that relate to the pedal in the same way. This automatically turns off grate to pedal. This automatically turns on and off our 32-foot contra principal, the lowest stop that we have, automatically turns it on and off. This, similarly, the 32-foot contra bourdon, the cymbal. Really? That turns on the cymbal? Huh. You learn something new every day. And then, last but not least, if you can reach it all the way over there, that turns on the 2D. The same as this guy. So, that is all of the pistons and how they operate. So now we're going to learn how to set the pistons. Okay, we're going to learn how to set the pistons so that you can save your own registrations in them. Okay, the registrations I have are fine, but they may not be what you want, and so this is if you need to change them. So first off, everything on here basically just goes as you want it to, and I'm going to have to shift how I'm recording some of this in the middle, so apologies if this gets kind of clunky, because I want to show you the instructions and where to press things, but I can't hold the phone all of the time. So first things first, we're going to hold set. And then we press M1 and it will start blinking. Ta-da. So you have to hold it down and then press it. I'm not sure what the or M2 is for. I know M1 works and it gives you access to 2 at the same time. Now we have to enter access code 1 and it will stop blinking. Next, we push M1 or M2. This is where the parentheses are important, because if you want to edit memory 1, then you have to have memory 1 selected. If you want to edit memory 2, then you have to have this one selected. So this is where you can flip back and forth. But at this point, you are good to go. Okay, you have made it into the system where it says it can edit things. So you're good. You made it if you got this far. Now, I'm going to press piston 3. Okay, this is what piston 3 is currently set as. You don't have to press a piston before you edit it. I'm just showing you what it looks like before we get in. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off all of the swell and I'm going to turn on all of the choir. Boom. Crazy change from what was originally there. Now, that is the select registration step. Now we're going to push set and hold set, and then we're going to push our desired piston. So we're going to rewrite number 3 in this case and release both together. This is where the phone. So push set and hold right down here, pushing and holding, and we need piston 3. This is the one we're going to overwrite. So press 3, release them together. Now for good measure, I'm going to press 2. You're not even going to see it change, but I'm going to show you. Okay, here's 2 as selected. We have some things on the swell, and not everything is on over here in the choir. So now I'm going to press piston 3. Ta-da! Everything is off on the swell. Everything is on in the choir. Now, you can edit more than one piston without having to go back to that very step 1 of hold set, press 1 M2, enter access code. Once you've entered the access code, you are in until you shut the organ off. So you can change as many settings as you want by holding set, pressing the piston that you want to save it to. You're good to go many times as you can do that until you shut the organ off. You can even play through a piece and use the pistons to change things around without having to, and then if you stop in the middle and you're like, oh, hey, I actually meant to add this stop on this piston, you can make that edit and then keep going. So it's a very versatile tool, arguably the most versatile tool for this whole instrument, which is why someone needs to know how to do it in case that piece of paper gets lost. Okay, we did it. We covered a lot about how this organ operates, what the manuals are, what the stops are, how to read the stops and read the registration of a piece, how to work with the pedals a little bit. And so there's not how to set a registration. I mean, use the piston, save that as the big piece. And so there's not a lot left to really cover. So you're almost there. Good job. And then I'm going to share some little tidbits and useful things that you might enjoy. Or maybe you're still around. Maybe they're not. Who knows? The last little elements of the organ as in terms of how it operates is that it operates on a system called MIDI. MIDI is not the audio. MIDI is the programming to make the audio run. And because it's a program, you can change it. My advice, do not change it. Okay? Do not go messing around with the MIDI. But almost all of the MIDI controls are located on the left side of the organ, and they are buttons just like the pistons that read things like MIDI pedal 3, MIDI pedal 7, MIDI channel 4, or choir 4, MIDI choir 8. All of those things, just don't mess with it. There's no need to deal with it. Then the other element is, we talked about the carillon over here on the right side in terms of you have those different little transposition dial things going on. There's two other options. There is a full transposer for the organ. It is currently, as I am leaving it, set to 0, and it has a little brass tack that will show you where the transposition is kind of set, and if it's in the center on the top, that means you're all good to go. It's neutral transposition. But it can go higher or lower. So if you're accompanying a singer, and they want it in a lower key, but you don't want to have to, you want to read that particular piece of music, then you can transpose it down for them. Works great. Similarly, there's a tuning knob, so you can do micro adjustments to tuning. Leave that one where it's at unless you need to change it. But the tuning is good as of when I'm making this video, so hopefully it's still good. I mean, it's electronic, so it doesn't go out of tune. You would just be adjusting to a soloist, or if the piano goes really sharp and you need to adjust to the piano, something like that. So for the most part, the sides, you don't need to worry about except for that on and off power button, and I'll cover how to shut it off in a second, as well as the chime board if you're doing something with chimes. I'm also leaving a little something on the organ, this little red pamphlet. It's about the Iowa State organ program. I'm an Iowa State graduate. I went to Iowa State to study music education and composition, and I studied organ while at Iowa State after starting my organ studies on this instrument. And so hopefully that little pamphlet can give you a little bit more guidance on some things about how pipe organs are different than electronic organs, or it can give you the resources of some place to go to help learn more. I'm sure Dr. Zach, or if Dr. Zach has left and it's someone else, they would be more than happy to help you figure out how to make this organ operate. Organ master shoes are very useful. If you can find a guide on the basics of organ playing, that's also really useful, particularly with the feet. They have a lot of good foot exercises to help build that autonomy. And yes, the church does have a collection of some organ music from Mrs. Doolittle, as well as maybe a little bit of music from Ray Hampton, who taught me. And if you can get a hold of me, I could maybe give you some of my music as well. So there's opportunities abound. So last but not least, let's turn off this organ. It's very similar to how you turned on the organ. We're just going to hold down this power button for 2 or 3 seconds. And ta-da, you're done. That's right, you're not really done. You thought this was done? Not quite. And technically I missed a step in how to start turning on the organ. Now, there's a roll cover here. I can't pull it out with my arm, but there's a roll cover. I'll show you what it looks like in a second. And that has a lock to it. At this time, as I am making this, we never lock it. I don't even know where the key is. So, just make sure that roll cover gets shut. It helps protect the keys from anything crazy happening by, and certainly sunlight fading the keys. So just make sure that that roll cover gets put down, and I'll show you that here in a second. Okay, there's that roll cover down.